The best diet was the one I didn't want to escape from. What 5 years of meticulous tracking taught me about adherence. Back in 2020, I thought I understood fat loss. Eat less, train hard, stay disciplined, repeat. And to be fair, that approach did work, at least partially. Over the course of several years, I repeatedly lost significant amounts of weight. In some years, more than 15 kilograms. My biomarkers improved, my waist shrank, my conditioning improved, I looked leaner. But there was a recurring pattern that kept repeating itself almost mechanically. I would diet aggressively for months, usually with very high adherence during structured periods. Then, eventually, I would enter what I called a break phase. Sometimes this happened during travel, sometimes during holidays, sometimes simply because I wanted a psychological release valve. The interesting thing is that these periods were almost never impulsive. They were planned. That distinction matters. I wasn't secretly binge eating in my car. I wasn't hiding food. I wasn't spiraling emotionally. In fact, most of the time, I felt completely in control of the decision. The problem was not loss of control. The problem was the structure itself. My old model looked something like this. Extremely rigid dieting during deficit phases, followed by periods of essentially unrestricted eating, followed by eventual re-entry into another aggressive cut. And because I was disciplined enough to repeatedly lose the weight again, I convinced myself for years that the system fundamentally worked, but the data kept suggesting otherwise. Every year, I was successfully losing fat while simultaneously failing to stabilize the result. That forced me to start looking at fat loss differently. I began realizing that the real skill is probably not fat loss itself. Most motivated people can lose weight temporarily. The difficult part is constructing a system that survives holidays, survives travel, survives social events, survives fatigue, and survives the simple human desire to occasionally stop caring. That last part is important because I have no interest in pretending indulgence doesn't exist. I enjoy food. I enjoy planned periods of higher calorie eating. I enjoy vacations. I enjoy Christmas. I enjoy psychological relief from structure. I'm not trying to become a dieting monk. So, over time, my focus shifted away from trying to create the perfect diet towards something else entirely. How do you build a structure that remains functional even when real life happens? Ironically, one of the biggest breakthroughs came from making my regular dieting phase less miserable. For years, I convinced myself that I enjoyed extremely low-carb, clean eating meals, built mostly around giant salads and lean protein. In retrospect, I was not enjoying them. I was enduring them. That matters more than I realized. This year, I shifted toward meals that were still highly controlled calorically, but substantially more satisfying. Potatoes, rice, bananas, more moderate carbohydrate intake overall. Nothing magical happened metabolically. I was simply more satisfied. And because I was more satisfied, my transitions back into deficit eating became noticeably easier after planned indulgence periods. That may sound obvious. It wasn't obvious to me for years. Another thing the data forced me to confront is that consistency is not binary. I used to think in extremes, either on plan or off plan, but real long-term behavior is messier than that. You can train consistently, hit protein consistently, maintain body weight reasonably well, and still periodically overshoot calories quite dramatically. That doesn't automatically mean the entire system failed. At the same time, repeatedly regaining large amounts of weight after planned breaks is still useful information. Calling it planned does not magically remove consequences. That was another important realization. The data doesn't care about the story I tell myself about the data. I'm interested in long-term patterns, not motivational slogans, not transformation photos stripped of context, not fitness industry mythology, just patterns. What actually happens over years? What survives contact with real life? What fails repeatedly? What improves? What remains psychologically sustainable? I'm 54 years old now. I train hard, I track carefully, I experiment constantly. And increasingly, I think the most valuable lessons come not from perfect adherence, but from examining the places where adherence breaks down, even when those breakdowns are intentional, especially when they're intentional. I'm trying to document that process honestly, not as a coach, not as a guru, just someone who has accumulated enough longitudinal data to finally start seeing patterns that shorter time horizons tend to hide. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this, please consider liking and subscribing.